The station's lights began to dim at exactly 2,200 hours. This happened every night. The bright white light slowly changed to a soft blue glow, telling everyone that the night cycle had begun. Most trainees went to their quarters to sleep. The corridors became empty and quiet. Yuna was in the training archives. It was a large room filled with computers and data screens, where trainees could study battle tactics and watch recordings of famous fights. She came here often, always late, always alone. The other trainees thought she was trying to improve her average scores. The truth was simpler. She liked the quiet, and she liked having a reason to walk through empty corridors at night. Tonight, she stayed until 2,215 hours. Then she picked up her datapad, turned off her screen, and walked out into the dim blue hallway. Her boots made soft sounds on the metal floor. The air was cool and smelled like recycled oxygen. Somewhere far away, she could hear the deep hum of the station's engines. Otherwise, there was silence. She walked slowly, taking her time. She passed closed doors and dark windows that looked out into space. Stars hung in the blackness like scattered diamonds. It was beautiful, she thought. Peaceful. A good night for what was about to happen. The Varathi appeared when she turned the corner. Into corridor 7-Delta. Two of them stepped out of the shadows behind her. She heard their clawed feet on the metal floor and the soft hiss of their breathing. She did not turn around. She kept walking. Two more appeared from side passages, one on her left and one on her right. They moved to flank her, cutting off any escape. Their yellow eyes glowed in the dim blue light. And then Commander Dreth stepped out in front of her. Blocking the path ahead, Yuna stopped. She looked up at him. He was almost 3 feet taller than her, a mountain of scales and muscle and hatred. His claws were extended, each one as long as her finger. His teeth were bared in what he probably thought was a threatening smile. "Human," Dreth said. His voice echoed off the metal walls. "You are out late." Yuna's face showed nothing. "I was studying." Studying. Lieutenant Koss laughed from behind her. It was an ugly sound, like bones cracking. Humans always study. Real warriors train with their bodies, not their minds. "I do both," Yuna said quietly. The 5 Varathi were arranged perfectly around her now. Dreth in front. Koss and Gan behind. Veth and Tor on the sides. They had practiced this formation. They were proud of it. 5 predators surrounding one small prey. Dreth took a step closer. His shadow fell over Yuna like a dark blanket, swallowing her completely. She had to tilt her head back to look at his face. "We've been watching you," Dreth said. "Since you arrived. You walk alone. You eat alone. You have no friends, no allies, no one to protect you. You are exactly what humans are, weak and pathetic." "Maybe," Yuna said. Dreth blinked. This was not the response he expected. He had done this before, with other species who displeased him. They always reacted the same way. Fear, panic, begging, sometimes tears. The prey response. It made him feel powerful, but this human just stood there. Her face was blank. Her body was relaxed. Her voice was calm. It was wrong. "The coalition made a mistake," Dreth continued, pushing away his confusion. "They allowed humans to join as equals. But you are not our equals. You are soft. You are slow. You are nothing." "You might be right," Yuna said. Again, she agreed with him. It made Dreth angry. She was supposed to argue, to cry, to beg. That was how the game worked. He was the predator. She was the prey. She was supposed to act like prey. "Tonight we are going to teach you a lesson," Dreth growled. He flexed his claws, letting the dim light shine on their sharp edges. "Nothing permanent. Just something to help you remember your place. Something to remind you and every other human that you do not belong among warriors. Yuna looked at his claws. Then she looked at his face. Then she did something that made all 5 Varathi freeze in surprise. She set her datapad down on the floor. Carefully, gently, like she was putting a baby to sleep. Then she straightened up and looked directly into Dreth's eyes. "You have 10 seconds to walk away," she said. The silence lasted for 3 heartbeats. Then the Varathi burst into laughter. It was loud and harsh and filled the corridor like thunder. Kos was laughing so hard he had to lean against the wall. Veth and Tor were slapping each other's backs. Even Gan, who rarely showed emotion, was making a choking sound that passed for amusement. 10 seconds? Kos wheezed, trying to catch his breath. "The human thinks she can threaten us? One tiny female against 5 Varathi warriors? Perhaps she has lost her mind," Tor suggested. "I have heard humans are mentally fragile." "Oh, perhaps," Dreth said, stepping even closer to Yuna. "She is too stupid to understand fear. Let me help you understand, little creature." He reached for her with one massive clawed hand. He was going to grab her throat, lift her off the ground, show her how helpless she truly was. It would be easy. It would be satisfying. Yuna moved. She moved like water flowing through cracks. She moved like a shadow sliding across a wall. She moved faster than anything Dreth had ever seen. One moment, his hand was reaching for her throat. The next moment, his hand was reaching for nothing, because his arm was no longer attached to his body. Pain. Impossible. Unbelievable pain. Dreth looked down and saw purple blood pumping from his shoulder. He saw his arm lying on the floor, claws still twitching. He opened his mouth to scream, but before the sound could come out, 3 precise strikes hit his nerve clusters under his remaining arm. Behind his knee, at the base of his skull, his body stopped obeying him. His legs folded. He crashed to the floor like a falling tree, conscious but paralyzed, watching with wide yellow eyes as the small human girl turned toward his squad. Kos reacted first. He was the fastest of the group, the one who had won speed competitions on his home world. He lunged at Yuna with both claws extended, aiming to cut her in half. His claws cut nothing but air. Yuna was not there anymore. She was beside him, then behind him, then somehow beneath him. He felt impacts against his body, sharp, precise, impossibly painful. His knee bent the wrong way. His elbow shattered. Something in his chest cracked and made breathing difficult. He fell. Veth and Tor attacked together. They were trained soldiers. They knew how to fight as a team. One would distract, the other would kill. It was a simple strategy that had worked 100 times before. It did not work tonight. Yuna flowed between them like smoke. Every strike they threw hit nothing. Every defense they raised was useless. She found the gaps in their scales, the soft places that Varathi pretended did not exist. She struck those places with fingers that felt like iron spikes. Veth went down first, clutching his throat, making wet gurgling sounds. Tor lasted 2 seconds, longer before something in his spine made a popping noise and his legs stopped working. Gan saw everything. He was the oldest of the squad, the most experienced. He had fought in wars that younger soldiers only read about. And in that moment, watching his comrades fall, he made a decision. He ran. He got 4 steps. Yuna appeared in front of him like a ghost. He did not see her move. One moment she was behind him, dealing with Tor. The next moment she was blocking his path, her dark eyes looking up at him with no emotion at all. "Please," Gan whispered. It was the first time he had ever said that word to an enemy. Yuna tilted her head slightly, like she was considering his request. Then her hand moved, and Gan joined his comrades on the cold metal floor. The fight had lasted less than 2 minutes. Yuna stood in the middle of the corridor, surrounded by 5 broken Varathi soldiers. She was not breathing hard. She was not sweating. She looked exactly the same as she had before, calm, quiet, average. Commander Dreth was still conscious, still paralyzed, still watching. Purple blood pooled around his severed arm. His eyes were wide with something he had never felt before in his entire life. Fear. Yuna walked over to him and knelt down so their faces were level. Her expression did not change. "I warned you," she said simply. Then she picked up her datapad, stepped over the bodies, and walked away into the dim blue corridor. Behind her, Dreth lay in his own blood and tried to understand what had just happened. He had been a predator his whole life. He had never imagined what it felt like to be preyed on. Now he knew. The space station floated in the darkness between stars like a metal island in an ocean of nothing. They called it Varus 7, and it was the biggest military training academy in 12 star systems. Soldiers came here from every corner of the galaxy. Some had scales. Some had fur. Some had skin that changed colors. And some were human. Yuna was one of the humans. She was 23 years old, not too tall, not too short. Her black hair was always tied back in a simple ponytail. She spoke only when someone asked her a question. She ate alone in the big dining hall while other trainees laughed and talked at their tables. When she walked through the metal corridors of the station, people barely noticed her. She was like a shadow, quiet, forgettable. Average. Every week, the instructors gave tests, combat simulations, physical challenges, strategy games. Yuna always scored in the middle. Never the best, never the worst. Just there. The instructors wrote boring notes in her file. Acceptable performance. No concerns. No special attention needed. This was exactly what Yuna wanted. On the third week of training, she was walking to the simulation rooms when she felt eyes on her back. She did not turn around. She did not speed up or slow down. She just kept walking, her warm boots making soft sounds on the metal floor. But she noticed. She always noticed. The eyes belonged to the Vorathi. There were 5 of them. They were reptiles, 8 feet tall, with scales the color of dried blood. Their eyes were yellow with black slits in the middle. They had claws that could cut through steel and teeth that could crush bone. The Vorathi were famous warriors. Their home planet was a place of endless war, and they were proud of their strength. Commander Dreth was their leader. He had fought in 3 major wars and killed more enemies than he could count. Medals covered his chest. Other species stepped aside when he walked past. He had requested this training assignment himself. The official reason was cultural exchange. The real reason was much simpler. He hated humans. "Look at that one," Dreth said to his squad. His voice was deep and rough, like rocks grinding together. He pointed one clawed finger at Yuna as she walked away. "Soft, weak, slow, and the Coalition calls them our allies." Lieutenant Koss stood beside him. Koss was younger than Dreth, eager to please, always looking for approval. They should never have been allowed in the academy, Koss agreed. Humans are prey animals. They eat plants. They have no claws, no fangs, no armor. What can they possibly offer? The other 3 Vorathi made sounds of agreement. They were soldiers named Veth, Tor, and Gon. They followed Dreth without question. "I have been watching this one," Dreth continued. "She's always alone. No friends. No protection. She would be easy." "Easy for what, Commander?" Koss asked, though he already knew the answer. "A lesson." Dreth's mouth twisted into something that might have been a smile. "The Coalition thinks humans deserve respect. I think they deserve to know their place. Tonight, after training ends, we will teach this little creature what happens when prey pretends to be predator." The plan was simple. They would wait until the station's lights went dim for the night cycle. They would find the human girl when she was alone. They would hurt her not enough to kill, not enough to leave obvious marks, but enough to make her afraid. Enough to send a message. Dreth thought it would be easy. Humans were small. Humans were fragile. What could one human girl do against 5 Varathi warriors? He did not know about Yuna's grandmother. Yuna had been born in a small city in Korea, on a planet called Earth. Her parents worked long hours and were often away. So Yuna spent most of her childhood with her grandmother, a woman everyone called Halmoni. Halmoni was old. Her hair was white, her face was covered in wrinkles, and she walked with a cane. But her eyes were sharp and cold, like winter ice. She never smiled without a reason. She never spoke without purpose. When Yuna was 5 years old, Halmoni took her to the mountains behind their home. The trees were thick and the air was fresh and cold. They walked until they reached a clearing where no one could see them. "The world is cruel," Halmoni said. Her voice was soft but firm. "Do you understand this?" Little Yuna shook her head. "You will," Halmoni said. "Someday, someone will try to hurt you. Someone stronger. Someone bigger. Someone who thinks you are weak because you are small and quiet. When that day comes, you must be ready." "Ready for what, Halmoni?" The old woman looked at her granddaughter with eyes that had seen too much. "Ready to be crueler than them." That day, the lessons began. Halmoni had survived a great war when she was young. She had been just a girl, not much older than Yuna, when soldiers came to her village. She did not like to talk about what happened there. But she had lived. Many others had not. And she had promised herself that her family would always know how to survive. Every day after school, Yuna trained. She learned how to move without making sound. She learned how to fall without getting hurt. She learned where to strike a body that caused the most pain. She learned that size and strength meant nothing if you knew where someone was weak. Everyone is weak somewhere, Halmoni taught her. The biggest, strongest enemy has soft places. Find them, use them, end the fight before it begins. By the time Yuna was 15, she could defeat grown men in seconds. But Halmoni was not satisfied. "Humans are not the only threat anymore," the old woman said. They were sitting in the kitchen, drinking tea. The news on the screen showed images of alien ships landing on Earth. First contact, they called it. The universe was bigger than anyone had imagined. New enemies, new bodies, new weaknesses to learn. Halmoni had connections, old friends from her past, people who worked in shadows and kept no records. They introduced Yuna to teachers who had no names, in training facilities that did not exist. She learned how to fight creatures with scales, with extra limbs, with bones in strange places. She learned which alien species had nerve clusters under their arms, and which had vital organs in their legs. She learned everything, and then she learned to hide it. "Never show your full strength," one of her nameless teachers had told her. "The enemy you surprise is the enemy you defeat. Let them think you are weak. Let them think you are prey. And when they come for you, I end them," Yuna had said. Quickly and quietly. No witnesses. No evidence. Just results. Now, on Station Varus 7, Yuna walked through the metal corridors with her head down and her scores average and her reputation invisible. She knew the Varathi were watching her. She had known since the first day. She saw how Dreth looked at humans, like they were insects, like they were food. She saw the hatred in his yellow eyes. She could have reported them. She could have stayed in groups, found protection, avoided being alone. But that was not why she was here. The nameless teachers had given her a mission before she left Earth. Watch, learn, and if anyone threatens humanity's position in the coalition, handle it quietly. Yuna set her datapad on the small desk in her quarters and looked at herself in the mirror. Her face was calm. Her eyes were empty. She looked like a scared little human girl, alone and vulnerable. She looked exactly like Bait. Tonight, the Varathi would come for her. They thought they were hunters. They thought she was prey. By morning, the galaxy would begin to learn a very old lesson, one that Earth's history had taught again and again. The quiet ones are always the most dangerous. The station security system recorded everything. Cameras watched every corridor, every room, every corner of Varus 7. Thousands of hours of footage were stored in massive computer banks, ready to be reviewed if anything went wrong. But when the security officers tried to watch what happened in Corridor 7 Delta that night, they found nothing. The footage was corrupted. Static filled the screens where there should have been images. The audio was just noise. 2 hours of recordings, completely destroyed. The official report called it electromagnetic interference from a passing solar flare. This was a lie. There was no solar flare. Someone had erased the footage. Someone with access to systems that regular officers could not touch. Someone who wanted the events of that night to stay hidden. But the corridor itself told a story. Maintenance workers arrived at 0300 hours, called by automatic sensors that detected structural anomalies. What they found made them stop and stare in silence. Claw marks covered the wall's deep scratches, where someone had tried to grip the metal and failed. The floor had dents in it, impact craters from heavy bodies hitting hard. There was a Varathi combat knife stuck in a support beam, buried 6 inches deep, thrown with a force that should have been impossible. And there was blood. Purple Varathi blood everywhere. On the walls, on the floor, on the ceiling, splattered in patterns that spoke of violence beyond anything the workers had ever seen. What happened here? One of them whispered. Nobody answered. Nobody knew. By 0400 hours, the corridor was sealed. By 0500 hours, a special cleaning team had arrived. People in white suits who spoke to no one and answered no questions. By 0600 hours, Corridor 7 Delta looked exactly as it always had. Clean metal walls. Smooth floor. No evidence that anything had ever happened there. The 5 Varathi soldiers were gone. Not dead. Not in the medical bay. Not arrested or transferred. Just gone. Their quarters were empty. Their personal belongings had vanished. When other trainees asked about them, the instructors looked confused and said there were no Varathi in that training group. There had never been any Varathi in that training group. The computer records agreed. No Commander Dreth, no Lieutenant Koss, no Veth, Tor, or Gan. Their names had been deleted from every database. Their service records had been erased. Their biometric profiles, the files that proved they existed, had simply disappeared. It was as if 5 decorated Varathi warriors had never been born. In a small office near the command center, 2 humans sat across from each other. One was Admiral Hyan, an older man with gray hair and tired eyes. He was the station's official human liaison officer, responsible for making sure human trainees were treated fairly. The other was a woman named Ambassador Park. Her title said she worked in cultural relations. Her real job was something else entirely. "Explain this to me," Admiral Hyan said. His voice was tight with controlled anger. 5 Varathi soldiers vanish overnight. No bodies. No records. Nothing. And you're telling me this is handled? Ambassador Park sat with perfect posture, her hands folded in her lap. Her face showed nothing. "The situation has been resolved, Admiral. That's all you need to know." "Resolved?" Hyan leaned forward. "I've been in the military for 30 years. I know what resolved means. It means bodies. It means cover-ups. It means someone did something that can never be undone." Park was silent for a moment. Then she reached into her bag and pulled out a small data device. She placed it on the desk between them. "This is footage from a hidden camera in Corridor 7 Delta. One of ours, not the station's security system. Watch it." Hyam picked up the device and activated the small screen. He watched for 2 minutes. His face went pale. His hands began to shake. When the footage ended, he set the device down carefully, like it might explode. "That's impossible," he whispered. And yet it happened. One human girl, against 5 Arathi combat veterans. Hyan shook his head slowly. She took them apart like they were children. "I've never seen anything move that fast. How is this possible? Who is she?" Park retrieved the device and put it back in her bag. "Her name is Yuna. She's one of ours. One of yours? What does that mean?" "It means," Park said carefully, "that she belongs to a program that doesn't exist. A program that has never existed. Earth recognized a long time ago that we would need soldiers who could fight enemies we hadn't even met yet. Soldiers who could protect humanity against any threat from any species." Hyan stared at her. "We have soldiers like that? Human soldiers who can defeat Varathi warriors in hand-to-hand combat. We have a few. Very few. They're trained from childhood. Their records are sealed. Their identities are protected. They live normal lives, take normal jobs, blend into normal crowds. And when humanity needs them," Park paused, "they do what needs to be done. The Varathi will ask questions. 5 of their soldiers don't just disappear without someone noticing. The Varathi government has already been contacted." Park's voice was cold and businesslike. "We showed them what their soldiers planned to do. We showed them what happened when they tried. They've decided that those 5 soldiers were never assigned to this station. Administrative error. Paperwork mix-up. These things happen." Hyan blinked. "They're just going to pretend it didn't happen? They don't have a choice, Admiral. Think about it. 5 of their best warriors were destroyed by one small human female. If that story gets out, every species in the coalition will look at the Varathi differently. The Varathi are proud. They would rather delete 5 soldiers from existence than admit they were beaten so easily. And the soldiers themselves? Where are they now?" Park stood and smoothed her uniform. "Being treated in a facility that doesn't exist. Some of them will recover. Some won't. They'll never speak about what happened. They've been convinced that keeping silent is in their best interest." "Convinced?" "We can be very convincing, Admiral." Hyan sat in silence for a long moment. He thought about Yuna, the quiet trainee with average scores who ate alone in the dining hall. He had seen her a dozen times and never looked twice at her. That was the point. He realized now. That was always the point. "How many are there?" he asked finally. "Soldiers like her?" Park walked to the door. "Enough. More than anyone expects. Less than we'd like." She paused with her hand on the control panel. "The Coalition thinks humans are the soft species. The emotional ones. The ones who cry at sad stories and make friends too easily. We encourage that belief. It keeps us safe. Until someone tests us." "Exactly." Park opened the door. "And when they test us, they learn. Or they disappear. Either way, the message spreads. Don't threaten humans. Don't target humans. Don't assume humans are weak." She looked back at him with eyes that held no warmth. "We survived ice ages, Admiral. We survived world wars. We survived ourselves. Do you really think we'd let some lizards in spacesuits push us around?" She left without waiting for an answer. Admiral Hyan sat alone in his office for a long time. He thought about human history. The wars, the famines, the plagues, the countless times humanity should have died out but didn't. The endless capacity for violence that lived in human hearts, Usually hidden, usually controlled, but always there. The Varathi was strong. The Varathi were fierce. The Varathi were born warriors, but they had only been fighting for a few thousand years. Humans had been killing each other since they learned to pick up rocks. Somewhere, on the station, a quiet girl with average scores was sleeping peacefully in her quarters. Tomorrow she would wake up, eat breakfast alone, attend training, score in the middle of her class. No one would notice her. No one would remember her. And that, Hyan understood now, was exactly the point. The most dangerous weapons are the ones you never see coming. News travels fast in space. Faster than ships. Faster than light. Gossip moves through space stations like air through vents, silent, invisible, everywhere at once. Within a week, every trainee on Varus 7 had heard some version of the story. It started small. A whisper in the dining hall. A quiet conversation in the training rooms. Someone had heard something from someone who knew someone else. The details were confused, the facts unclear, but the core remained the same. Something had happened to the Varathi squad. I heard they transferred out suddenly, a Kellian trainee said to his friend. The Kellians were blue-skinned insectoids with 4 arms and large compound eyes. They were known for collecting information. Emergency orders. Very strange. That's not what I heard, his friend replied, all 4 arms waving nervously. I heard there was an accident. Equipment malfunction. Very tragic. At another table, 2 Morven soldiers were having a different conversation. The Morvens were massive beings, nearly as large as Varathi, covered in thick gray fur. They were proud warriors, second only to the Varathi in reputation. My cousin works in station administration, one Morven said quietly. He says there are no records of those Varathi. No transfer orders. No accident reports. Nothing. It's like they never existed. That's impossible. I saw them. I trained with them. Commander Drath mocked me during combat drills. Then where is he now? Where are any of them? The Morven had no answer. As the days passed, the stories grew. Someone claimed to have seen blood in Corridor 7 Delta before it was cleaned. Someone else said they heard screaming in the middle of the night cycle. A third person insisted they saw security officers carrying large bags, body-sized bags, to a transport ship that left without any official record. And then a new detail entered the story. A detail that made everyone uncomfortable. I heard it was a human, a trainee whispered to a group of friends. They were in a storage room, away from listening ears, speaking in the lowest voices possible. Just one. A female. She caught them in the corridor and what? And they couldn't stop her. 5 Varathi warriors. They couldn't even slow her down. Silence followed this statement. Then nervous laughter. That's ridiculous. Humans are the weakest species in the coalition. 1 human girl against 5 Varathi? She would be dead before she could blink. Then why are the Varathi gone? Why are there no records? Why won't anyone talk about it? No one had good answers. Far away from Varus 7, on a Varathi military vessel, Commander Drath woke up in a hospital bed. He was missing an arm. 3 of his ribs were broken. There was nerve damage throughout his body that the doctor said might never fully heal, but he was alive. That surprised him more than anything else. A Varathi officer in a crisp uniform sat beside his bed. The officer's face showed no emotion, but his yellow eyes were cold. Do you know where you are, Commander? Drath tried to speak. His throat was dry, his voice rough. Medical facility. Somewhere classified. Correct. Do you know why you're here? The human. Drath closed his eyes, remembering. The fear came back, fresh and sharp. The human girl. There was no human girl. The officer's voice was flat and final. There was an equipment malfunction on your transport shuttle. A tragic accident. You and your squad were critically injured. Soldiers Koss and Veth did not survive. Soldiers Tor and Gan are in long-term care. You are the only one expected to make a full recovery. Dreth stared at him. That's not what happened. She attacked us. She moved like nothing I've ever seen. There was an equipment malfunction, the officer repeated. His voice was harder now, carrying a warning. That is the official story. That is the only story. Do you understand? But the truth is that 5 decorated Varathi warriors were defeated by a single human female. A small, weak, soft human. The officer leaned closer, his eyes burning with something between anger and fear. If that truth becomes public, how do you think other species will see us? How will they see the Varathi? We are warriors. We are conquerors. We did not lose to prey animals. Dreth was silent. He understood now. This was not about justice. This was about pride. Varathi pride. National pride. If the galaxy learned what really happened, the Varathi reputation, built over centuries of war, would crumble. What do you want me to do? Dreth asked quietly. Forget. Heal. Accept your discharge with honor. Never speak of this again. The officer stood. You will receive full benefits. Your family will be cared for. Your record will show a long career of distinguished service, ended by a tragic accident. That is more than you deserve, considering the shame you've brought upon us. And the human? What happens to her? The officer walked to the door. Nothing. She continues her training. She graduates. She becomes a normal, boring, forgettable human officer. The coalition never learns what happened. He paused, looking back at Dreth with disgust. We lost this round, Commander. We will not lose the next one. But that is not your concern anymore. Your war is over. The door closed behind him. Dreth lay in his hospital bed, staring at the ceiling. His missing arm throbbed with phantom pain. He could still see her, the human girl, her dark eyes empty, her face calm, her hands moving faster than thought. He had been a warrior for 40 years. He had killed hundreds of enemies. He had never been afraid of anything. Now, whenever he closed his eyes, he saw her. And he was terrified. Back on Varus 7, the rumors continued to spread. Other species began to look at the human trainees differently. Not with respect, not yet, but with something new. Curiosity, uncertainty, perhaps even a small seed of fear. The Kellians started sitting farther from the humans in the dining hall. The Morvans stopped making jokes about human weakness. Even the instructors, battle-hardened veterans from a dozen species, became more careful in how they treated human trainees. Something had shifted. Something small, something subtle, but something real. The story continued to grow as it traveled. By the time it reached other stations, other planets, other systems, the details had changed. Some versions said it was 10 Varathi, not 5. Some said the human was a man, not a woman. Some said there were weapons involved, or traps, or poison. But the core always remained the same. A human had defeated Varathi warriors, easily, completely, and no one knew how. Don't trust the soft ones. A trader whispered to his partner at a spaceport bar. 3 systems away from Varus 7. I heard they're not as soft as they look. I heard some of them are different. Different how? Dangerous, hidden, pretending to be weak while they watch and wait. The trader looked around nervously, lowering his voice even more. I heard there's a reason they survived on that death world they call home. I heard they didn't just survive. They conquered everything. His partner laughed, but it was an uncertain laugh. You're being paranoid. They're just humans. Little pink creatures who cry at sad stories. Maybe, the trader said. Or maybe that's what they want us to think. On Vera 7, Yuna continued her training. She scored in the middle of every test. She ate alone. She spoke only when necessary. She was quiet and forgettable and perfectly average. But now, when she walked through the corridors, other species stepped aside. They didn't know why. They didn't understand the feeling that made them move. It was just instinct, the ancient primal instinct that prey animals develop around predators. They sensed something. Something hidden. Something waiting. They just didn't know what. 3 months passed on Station Vera 7. The training cycle continued. Trainees learned to fight, to plan, to lead. Some excelled. Some failed. Most fell somewhere in between. Yuna graduated in the exact middle of her class. Position number 47 out of 93 trainees. Perfectly average. Perfectly forgettable. Her instructors wrote the same boring notes they had written all year. Acceptable performance. No concerns. No special attention needed. She received her assignment during the graduation ceremony. Border patrol vessel. The edge of coalition space. A quiet posting where nothing ever happened. The kind of job that nobody wanted and nobody noticed. Bad luck, a Kellyan trainee said to her as they waited in line to receive their orders. Border patrol is boring. You'll spend years doing nothing. Yuna nodded politely. That's okay. I like quiet. The Kellyan gave her a strange look. There was something in his compound eyes that hadn't been there before. Uncertainty. Wariness. He moved slightly away from her, putting distance between them without realizing he was doing it. Yuna pretended not to notice. That night, on her last evening at the academy, she returned to her quarters to pack her few belongings. Her room was small and plain, with metal walls and a single narrow bed. She had not decorated it. She had not made it feel like home. It was just a place to sleep between training sessions. As she folded her uniforms, her datapad beeped with an incoming message. No sender identification. No return address. Just 2 lines of text on the screen. Your grandmother would be proud. The family. Yuna read the message twice. Then she deleted it. Then she deleted the deletion record so no one could ever recover it. She thought about her grandmother Harmony back on Earth. The old woman was still alive. Still living in that small house near the mountains. Still drinking tea and watching the news and waiting for the day when her granddaughter would come home. Yuna had not contacted her in 6 months. It was safer that way. The less connection between them, the less chance that someone could trace Yuna back to her training, back to the truth. But she knew her grandmother was watching. Somehow, through channels that should not exist, Harmony knew everything. She had always known everything. Yuna wondered if Harmony had felt the same way all those years ago. After the war, after the violence, after the things she did to survive. Did she ever sit alone in a quiet room and wonder if it was worth it? Did she ever look at her hands and remember the lives they had ended? There was a knock at the door. Why Yuna tensed for just a moment. Old habits, impossible to break. Then relaxed. She knew who it was before she opened the door. Admiral Hyan stood in the corridor. He looked older than he had 3 months ago. His hair was grayer. His eyes were more tired. He was carrying a small box. May I come in? He asked. Yuna stepped aside to let him enter. The door closed behind him. For a long moment, the Admiral just stood there, looking around the bare room. Then he held out the box. This is for you. From Ambassador Park. Yuna took the box but didn't open it. What is it? I don't know. She said you would understand. Hyan paused, clearly struggling with something. I've been trying to figure out what to say to you for 3 months. Ever since I saw the footage. There is no footage, Yuna said automatically. Of course. There's no footage. There were no Varathi. Nothing happened. Hyan shook his head slowly. I've been in the military my whole life. I thought I understood war. I thought I understood soldiers. But you, he trailed off, unable to find the words. I'm just a trainee with average scores, Yuna said. Her voice was flat. Nothing special about me. Is that what you tell yourself? To sleep at night? Yuna met his eyes. For just a moment, something flickered in her expression. Something real, something human, and then it was gone. I sleep very well, Admiral. Hyan nodded slowly. He moved toward the door, then stopped. When I was young, he said quietly, my grandfather told me stories about the old wars. The ones on Earth, before first contact. He said humans were capable of terrible things. Beautiful things too, but terrible things. He said we carried darkness inside us. All of us. Even the quiet ones. Especially the quiet ones. He looked at her. I didn't believe him then. I do now. He left without another word. Yuna stood alone in her room, holding the box. After a moment, she opened it. Inside was a single object. A photograph, old and faded, printed on real paper instead of displayed on a screen. It showed a young woman in a simple dress, standing in front of mountains. The woman's face was serious. Her eyes were sharp and cold. It was Halmoni. Young Halmoni. Before the gray hair and wrinkles. Before the tea and the cane. Before the years of pretending to be just a harmless old grandmother. On the back of the photograph, someone had written in neat Korean characters, the first lesson is always the hardest. Never forget who taught you. Yuna held the photograph for a long time. Then she tucked it carefully into her bag, next to her uniforms and her datapad and all the other ordinary things that ordinary people carried. The next morning, she boarded a transport ship heading for the border. She found her seat near the back, by the window. Other new officers filled the vessel, Kellians and Morvans and species she didn't recognize, talking excitedly about their first assignments. None of them sat near Yuna. She looked out the window as the ship lifted away from Vera 7. The station grew smaller and smaller until it was just a point of light among millions of stars. Then it was gone, left behind in the endless darkness of space. Somewhere in the galaxy, stories were still spreading. Whispers about what happened to the Varathi squad. Rumors about human strength. Questions without answers. Yuna knew the stories would grow. They always did. By next year, the story would have reached 100 planets. By the time she retired, it would be legend. And every species in the coalition would know, maybe not consciously, maybe not openly, that humans were not to be targeted. That was the point. That was always the point. Humanity could not compete with the Varathi in strength. They could not match the Kellians in speed or the Morvans in size. But they could do something none of those species could do. They could hide what they really were. They could walk among allies and enemies alike, looking small, acting weak, smiling their harmless smiles. They could be underestimated for centuries while they watched and learned and prepared. And when the time came when someone made the mistake of targeting a human who wasn't really prey, they could show the galaxy what millions of years of evolution had created. Not the strongest species. Not the fastest species. Not the biggest species. Just the most dangerous. Yun closed her eyes and leaned back in her seat. She thought about her grandmother, about the mountains of Korea, about the first lesson she ever learned. The quiet ones are always the most dangerous. The ship jumped into faster than light travel, carrying her toward the edge of known space. Behind her, the story continued to spread. Ahead of her, new missions waited. She was just one human among billions. One quiet girl with average scores and a forgettable face. One shadow among the stars, and that, she knew, was exactly how it should be. Because the moment the galaxy forgot to fear humans, the moment they decided the stories were just stories and the warnings were just rumors, that would be the moment someone else made the same mistake. Commander Dreth had made dot, and then there would be new stories, new warnings, new Varathi squads vanishing in the night. The lesson would be taught again. It always was. Humanity had been teaching it since they first picked up rocks and pointed sticks. They had taught it in forests and deserts, on battlefields and in bedrooms, in boardrooms and back alleys. They had taught it to each other for thousands of years before they ever left their planet. Now they were teaching it to the galaxy, and the galaxy was beginning to learn.